Right. People will be joining as we go along, but it's 11 o'clock and we're going to start. So, first of all, welcome everybody on this, what feels like a very unusual and challenging week for all of us. We've been hearing from many of you individually during the week, and thank you all for the support you've been offering to each other, and for the and for the input you've offered over the to other club members. All really appreciated. As Joe has said before, we're having a number of these webinars over the coming days. This is the first one, so we're using this really as an opportunity to see how we go with this, and so afterwards, any feedback in terms of how we operate them and we can make them better will be hugely appreciated. So don't hold back on that, because we want these to be successful and be a brilliant resource for all of you. So here we go. The first of these should really to be about services, because many of us are running services for people, and in these times when we have people off with illness, when we have people having to work remotely, and we have very vulnerable people often that we're trying to service and support, this is creating a lot of challenge. And I thought the first session should be one which tackled this issue directly. The person I asked to lead on it is, who I can just see to my right, is Lance Gardner. Lance, for those that don't know him, is the chief exec of a primary care organisation, Salford. But before that, he was the leader of Care Plus, which is a significant health and care mutual in North East Lincolnshire. During his time there, Lance led a number of led the organisation through a number of significant operational challenges and crises, including a massive winter crisis, which gave him enormous experience in relation to operational crisis management. So it's for that reason I specifically thought Lance would be a good person to get on today off the discussion. Lance is to talk for about 10 minutes, really get things going, and then I thought it'd be just good to go around the room and hear from people fairly briefly about either questions or things that are on their mind, and then we'll see how the discussion goes from there. But Lance, if I'm all right to hand over to you, you've prepared some thoughts ahead of the session, and we'll give you about 10 minutes to kick off, and then we'll bring other people in as we go along. We've got too many people on the line now to introduce individually. We can see many people on this line. So, but Lance, if you could kick things off, that'd be fantastic. And thanks for a great introduction as well, Joe. Much appreciated. Over to you, Lance.
Good morning, all. Can you all hear me? Can I have a thumbs up, please?
Thumbs up, yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I can see Kat and Brendan. So to friends and colleagues, it's always amazing to spend time with you. I'm just sorry it's under such difficult circumstances, and that some of you are going through some major challenges at the moment. I'm honoured that Craig's asked me to do this first session, because there are some people on this call who I admire and respect enormously. I wasn't proposing to talk much about delivering of care as such, because you're all experts in doing that anyway, and you know your client base is better than anybody else on the planet. What I have been looking through on the webinar and on the WhatsApp, and just some general themes that are coming through, is about sort of the business side and the business continuity, and just about being a leader when it's so hard and difficult at the minute. So the first stuff, some really practical stuff about buildings. Many of you are renting or own or have access to lots of buildings. My plea from the NHS and councils at the moment is we need those buildings. We need to, and we can reutilize those buildings really imaginatively at the moment. And it's going to be, it's about how flexible we are, and how responsive we can be then to the system. So to give you a really good example, I need to create, so in Salford, I'm busy creating a number of COVID assessment centres. So people who were worried they may have COVID, or people we know have got COVID, will be able to go to a centre that is not in a GP surgery and is not in a, and certainly not near a hospital, so that we can assess them in a safe environment and reassure them and give them the treatment they need and then get them on their way back home. But we needed buildings to do that. One of my GPs offered me a branch surgery, which would have been ideal, because he was saying he could decant out of it and we could just run it as another surgery, and it's away from everywhere else, except it's next door to Scott Darrag's nursery. So I ran Scott and I said, Scott, this is what we're thinking and I know what the answer is going to be. And he said, Blanche, you understand, please don't put the nursery, don't put a COVID centre next to the nursery, it'll wipe out the business. So we didn't, totally respected that decision, it was fine. To Scott, I mean, just a demonstration, we all know Scott's integrity. 15 minutes after the Prime Minister's announcement last night, I got a phone call from Scott going, I've got to close the nursery, open the surgery, use the surgery now as a COVID centre. And he's facilitating us with that. What we're able to do in turn is we can utilise some of his staff in that centre, so we're going to take some of his costs from him. We're going to take some of his staff bill from him. What we've also got is, certainly in my organisation, at our Christmas party, out of 150 staff, we had 24 under 4s. So I need a nursery for staff who are frontline primary care. And I can give that work to Scott, and I can work with Scott to enable that work. So he's given me with one hand, and I'm hoping to be able to give him some mutual aid with another. And he knows that I'm talking about this. I did agree with him. So we need to be able to think in a different way. And I've done the same with day centres. So some of you will have seen my earlier work where we're not able to use a GP practice, we're using day centres because they often have showers, they often have a clinical room, they have kitchens, they have really good facilities. And certainly within Social Club, the facilities that many of you deliver are first rate. So that's a brilliant building for us. And again, it means we've been able to take some of their staff on, so we've reduced some of their bill. They'll get their rents paid, they'll get their rates paid. We can sort all that with the council. It's worth you being au fait with the Civil Contingencies Act of 2004. It's not a huge document, but it will explain to you the powers that a council has to do really, really imaginative things at this time. And it has money with it. So there is ring-fenced money for Civil Contingencies Act. So they are able to support you to do something really different. And so that does diversification. So yes, we're switching off services like nurseries, like schools, to a degree, retail for shops and cafes. But what I've been doing with the social enterprises in Salford that run cafes is we're looking at them cooking the food that we then need to deliver to people who are isolated. And we're then working with the wholesalers to make sure they get their supplies. And so under the Civil Contingencies Act, a council can commandeer, instruct, whatever the words you want to use, wholesalers to supply emergency provision. So if some of you have got day centres with really good kitchens, industrial level, high quality kitchens, there are opportunities here for you to prepare food for use in other services, feeding NHS staff, feeding the emergency services. That all needs, and feeding vulnerable people who are not going to be able to get out. The other thing that we've been able to do, and fortunately we've done it anyway, but I know is happening now, is it's worth, if you have got to vacate your building or you are running on reduced income, is go to talk to your landlord. We were able to we're in a building now where the rents were a bit high, and I had 2.5 years left on the contract, and I've renegotiated that contract at the same price for another 5 years, but with the first year free. So you can start, and these landlords are really worried about businesses going under, so they will be imaginative. Think about, though, if you are vacating businesses, I'm getting the shut up soon from Craig, think about your insurance cover. Check your insurance covers if your building's not being used. and make sure that everything's going to be okay. So it's worth just checking that your insurance is going to support you for an empty building. The last thing I want to do, and I agree with Craig, I need to shut up and listen and just support you in any way I can, is we need to look after ourselves. This is going to go on for between 12 and 22 weeks. The positive is Wuhan today or yesterday reported no new cases. That's 12 weeks. So, that's what we were planning to. The way we're trying to do it in the UK is we're trying not to get to a peak, hence why some of these things happen and they feel draconian. It's what they're trying to do. They're trying to end up so we don't end up in the Italian situation. But you need to look after yourselves. I am really conscious that we need to be there for each other. And I've been talking to some of the mental health providers, and some of you are providers of mental health support and wellbeing support. We need online forums for wellbeing. We need e-learning packages about people being able to self-care and look after their mental health. Home working doesn't suit everybody. We need to think about, what are we sending people home to? I have no doubt, sadly, that in my organisation of 150 staff, I have probably got staff who may be in a domestic violence situation and who come to work because it's a safe place, and home is not deemed a safe place. And we need to think about that, and we need to think about where those staff can go that becomes safe, where they feel okay if they're not going to be in the office, and how do we make sure they're not isolated and they're okay. There's been a conversation this morning about annual leave. Do you cancel it? Do you go with it? Well, I arrived on annual leave last night and I've taken it. And I was under some pressure not to from my commissioners, but we'd taken the decision, and I'm here with a heavy heart. My organisation is looking to me for leadership, and I'm fortunate to be able to sit in a cottage on a beach at the minute, in this country, obviously. But I've got planned working time every day. The team, and it also gives my team a chance to stand up and show what they can deliver when I'm not there interfering and getting in the way. And I have every faith in the team will to deliver. They know where I am if they need me. But I need to know that I'm going to be okay in 3 weeks' time, 4 weeks' time. If as this escalates, I need to know. And the pace I've been working for the last 6 weeks was not sustainable. I am worried, and I have had conversations with staff who are, emailing me in the small hours, who are not sleeping, who are not, who are working through. And we are having conversations in our organisation about actively switching off email at a reasonable hour. And if you look at the companies in the Times 100, top 100, the top 10 all ban email working at home. Now, I know we can't do that, but they do it in a way that's to protect their staff's welfare, and we really need to think about that. We really need to be there. We need to be open and transparent. There is nothing wrong at the moment with putting your hand up and going, I'm struggling.
Yeah. And
the great thing about Social Club is we all know each other. Many of us have been working around the system for a while, and I have enormous respect for the people on this call. And if anybody ever needs any help, you know where I am. And I know that goes for all the members. And that's what Social Club, I know this is what Craig was trying to achieve when he did this. He didn't realise what it was going to be needed for. But to Craig's credit, we've now got a network of chief execs. This is a lonely place to be, because no matter how we feel personally, we've got to stand out there on the front and look, this is okay. We are calm. This is manageable. Whether we believe it or not, it's a different conversation. But we have to put that out there, but then talk privately and support each other privately when things get tough. I'll shut up there, Craig.
Lance, thank you, Lance, and I'm just taking over the mic now. Brilliant words. I was listening very, very carefully to everything you said there. Yes, on the mutual support point, I think what I took overall from that was many things, but I think the overwhelming point that I took from your contribution there, Lance, was the importance of mutual support at this time. We've got to stand together as leaders. We've got to get strength from each other as leaders as well. Psychologically and emotionally, this is a very challenging time for anybody in leadership. Organisations are challenged operationally, financially. Our people are under a lot of pressure, as you've just said. Some people are coping better than others, and as the leader figure, we've got to be visible. We've got to be available. We've got to have the emotional space for people to come to us, and we've also got to be quite resourceful in a very fast-moving situation. As you intimated, Lance, the situation in other parts of the world is starting to ease. Let's hope that means within a reasonable time we know that this has a beginning, a middle, and an end. I think as long as it's indeterminate, it's very, very scary, because we just don't know when the end of it is. I think once we know what the end of it will be a much more manageable situation for everybody, but we don't know that at the moment. So we're dealing with that indeterminate situation, which is very hard. I just want to, I think Leslie Dixon asked a question while you were talking about, you were just talking about the civil contingency stuff, and Leslie asked a specific question about how you, if you have buildings, how you sort of alert other people to it. Leslie, you're on the call. Could I just ask you to reiterate your question, because I may have got the wrong end of the stick.
Leslie, could you unmute your microphone and then speak? That's it.
Yep. Lance, you were mentioning about use of the building next to Scott's nursery, and saying, if you do have buildings, and I guess it's just if we have got space, and certainly we have got a building that as of tomorrow, there's very few people in here now, and as of tomorrow night there'll be nobody in here. Who we should be getting in touch with to offer that if it's useful to somebody else.
So as soon as we knew about the news about the vulnerable people and the older people being asked to stay at home, I went to the Director of Social Services and said, right, I need buildings, and please can you put a message out across your providers that you commission services from, that I'm going to need some support. And within 3 hours, I had a list of buildings and a list of social enterprises and charities offering to support us. So that was invaluable, and that came from me, but it can come from you. So yeah, they don't. No offence to my council colleagues, but because of austerity, many councils have gone through massive changes in their senior management teams. I think it's highly likely we've got councils with executives who are now responsible under the Civil Contingencies Act, who've never managed a major incident, never mind to this level. So they may not think to come to you, you may need to go to them. Same applies to CCGs. Many of them have never been involved in major incidents. They will welcome you contacting anybody through their comms team or whatever to go, we are here for you. We think we've got an offer. We're happy to support you and be flexible.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Just to bring, I just wanted to, obviously this is the first one of these, I wanted to give anyone on the call an opportunity to share anything that they either wanted to ask for others' advice on, or just talk about briefly about some of their experiences that you think it might be useful to relate to others. There's been a really good thread on WhatsApp. People have been fantastic on there, helping each other with all sorts of things. Would anybody just like to talk? Because this is essentially an opportunity for people to share in whatever way feels appropriate at the moment to them, particularly on services, but it can be on any dimension really of
Brendan's raising his hand.
Brendan, hello, Brendan.
And also Alison Hopkins.
So it's still got Brendan, then Alison. Thank you, Joe, for spotting that. Okay. Thank you.
First of all, thanks so much, Lance, for sharing your expertise, and that's a great example of cooperation with Scott. That was terrific to hear that. We operate a school. It's a school for children who are excluded or on the verge of exclusion from mainstream schooling, and they're the highest risk children imaginable. And as of yesterday's announcement, we're going to be closing on Friday. And the issue, we're dealing with all the issues of ensuring that all the support mechanisms are in place. What we're dealing with is that, I'm struggling to find the right words, staff sense of guilt that these children are going to be left without the support that they're providing, and knowing, given the risk profile, that the likelihood of some harm coming to them is very, very high. And how we support staff in those circumstances, and whether there's a read across from the NHS colleagues that could help us here, because we're looking after the children as best we can and their families, but there's also the staff dynamic here that we shouldn't forget. So any advice there would be really helpful.
Thank you. Perhaps we'll take another question, and then
so that was Alison.
Perhaps we'll just take another question. Alison, would you
Yes.
like to come on next as well? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's actually leads in. Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can hear.
Okay,
yeah, fine. We're good.
It leads in actually from Brendan. One of our difficulties has been classifying who is essential and critical, because we also deliver direct care, and we're having to school people, you know, and reduce their physical care that they're receiving. Some of it's actually good. We're moving more into self-management and so on, so it's exciting to see some of the changes already. But trying to make choices about who gets seen, especially as we have complex people that travel to us from across London, and some of obviously the over 70s, we're trying to work out how they're going to have care locally, because we can't just offload to the local services because they're obviously in dire straits. So the staff, and for me actually, thinking about our patient group and the choices we're making actually is very complex and hard for people, and sort of leads from Brendan's question about how we support our staff in this difficult time and clinical decision making that we're going to have to make.
Indeed. And thank you, Alison. And I would say that there's quite a lot of people on the call, and I'm aware that there's probably quite a few people who would probably like to share experiences.
Craig, can I just interrupt you? Judith has raised her blue hand on the screen, so she's got.
Fantastic. Good. Good. Thank you. Go on, Judith. I can't see the hands, so yeah, away you go.
Judith, you need to unmute your microphone first of all, and then we can hear you.
We'll get into it.
Oh dear.
No, that's not working.
Can anyone hear? Judith,
No,
we can't hear you. Can I ask you to type in the text box, and then we can read it out?
We can't hear you.
And if you'd like to we'll mute you again. Okay, Judith, could you please type your message in the chat box, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Craig, over to you.
Okay, sorry, we had a mic dysfunction there from Judith. It sounded a bit odd. I'm very conscious that a lot of you who are very active on the WhatsApp as well, and Neil Woodbridge, I think you're somewhere on the call, I believe, although I can't see you at the moment. Neil, you've had to be very responsive to this, because your income as an organisation has been affected quite profoundly by the presence or otherwise of clients this week. Are you able to just talk a little bit about the Thurrock experience?
Yeah, hi Craig. Basically we found the local authority had gone a little bit quiet on us, to say the least, and I think they were just trying to get their act together and possibly even being in a little bit of a panic. So what we did was we come up with a big list of all the things that we could offer, including 6 buildings. So really enjoying the conversation earlier, because we've emptied our day opportunities and staff resource, etc. And we moved to a sort of operating model where all our managers are across the borough and our staff are working from home and into people's houses where appropriate, because of the home care type stuff that we deliver. But what we also did, because we're a direct payments model and we're also based on individual service funds, and obviously the sudden massive reduction in customers basically could have a huge financial effect on us. So we got hold of the lead commissioner, and she has promised to carry on paying us, and has also agreed to pay us 4 weeks in advance to help our cash flow.
That's good. Okay. That's really helpful. And Have and on staffing, you've already, I suppose some people have already started to act already in terms of having to make some quite profound adjustments on staffing. Neil, is there part of that? Is that part of your story as well?
Yeah, we have lots of staff that are on statutory sick pay, for example. So to keep their minds at rest, because we've got quite a few in self-imposed isolation and one person who possibly were waiting, maybe diagnosed. And so what we're doing there is we've gone for promising people a 12-week average. So we've gone back over the last 12 weeks, worked out what their average salary is, and that's what we're paying them in this time of crisis, if you like. And that's put a lot of people's minds at rest. We've also offered people the fact that payday's not till Monday, but there's been massive issues with the shops around here, and our staff do live hand to mouth. So therefore, we've offered people salary advances if they need cash to go out and buy food, etc., as long as they're promising us they're not hoarding. So we're all part of that, and so we've set up lots of individual WhatsApp groups or WhatsApp groups for the staff that are out there in the field, and we've got a system of reporting every morning that's working for them, so that they're feeling as though they're being contacted. We're just about to start a Facebook campaign called Join the Miley High Club. And Miley is the expression in Thurrock I put on the WhatsApp earlier that's about, we don't like the word virus, so it's Miley Cyrus as in virus. So people say, how are you doing with Miley? And Miley High is just saying a virtual hello to people, because a lot of our people are now trapped within people with learning disabilities houses and have moved in with them and living with them, and it's a way of us communicating with them.
Right. And that's a lot of things going on locally, and I think your organisation is very much a sort of a local hub of collaboration, mutual aid, trying to facilitate people helping each other, which is fantastic. We've got Peter Grigg from Homestart on as well, and Peter runs an organisation which is basically a network of independent charities which Homestart UK supports as a group. But Peter, what are you getting any insights, or are there any aspects to this which are providing you with particular challenges that you might like to share?
Thanks, Craig, and thanks for everyone for joining. And Sarah Cook is also on the phone.
Yes, she is. I've just noticed.
A proper Homestart person who's actually running a scheme, doing all the hard work. But yeah, Homestart UK is a federation. So we have about 200 Homestarts around the country, around the UK, who provide home visiting and volunteering. And clearly, we took the decision this week, based on the latest advice, to ask Homestarts to stop home visiting and group work. And I think so. I mean, we're facing very similar challenges as you all are. In a federation, I guess there's the added complexity dimension of trying to have that collaborative leadership and distributed leadership across a network, which is, sometimes challenging, but actually also a great source of brilliant advice and experts that come through and have really good ideas to share. So Homestart UK is directed all its available resource on just helping the network help each other to help families, if that makes sense. Now, I think the one challenge that I can see, which is facing us and facing many others, is the tension between wanting to play your part in local volunteering efforts. And, we have 13,000 volunteers who would be well placed to do so. So wanting to play their part locally, but also wanting to do that in a coordinated way, centrally and nationally. And I think there's so much in between those two things. So to give you an example, in my area, there are about 4 different groups locally who've set up, all doing quite different things, some of it overlapping, some of it looking really well organised, a lot of it not, actually, a lot of it looking quite chaotic. And nationally, there's different groups coming together to sort of convene the volunteering effort. So the challenge I think I see is how do you ensure that volunteers in particular find purpose and a useful, effective role right now, and do all you can to help facilitate that. And that's a challenge I don't have any answers to. So if any of you have some answers, that'd be gratefully received. Just the longer term challenge is really trying to help trustees across the country in particular think through the longer term impact on this. And we have home starts with amazing trustees with all the knowledge they need and all the experience to think through longer term financial planning and things like that. And we will have some home starts who don't have such a robust and resilient trustee board, many of whom will be over 70, many of whom will be self-isolating right now, may not be connected digitally in quite the same ways. So we've got a spectrum of things to think through, but that's a general landscape from my point of view.
Thank you, Peter. I thought it might be useful and helpful just to go to Sarah Cook, because Sarah, as you said, Peter, is running a local Home Start, and Home Start basically provide support to children, well, to families with young children in localities up and down the country. So you're very much at the sharp end of Home Start, as it were, Sarah. What are you finding where you are, and what are you learning?
So we've got two main pressures at the moment. One is trying to support our food bank colleagues. We've got lots of families that we work with as Home Start that rely on food banks, that they can't get to the food bank, they're self-isolating. Food banks are really struggling because a lot of their volunteers are over 70, donations are down, so there's real pressure for food. So we're doing what we can. We've got a WhatsApp group set up with our food bank colleagues so that they can put requests there. We've got staff that are now, not being able to do their normal day-to-day work. So they're able to go to the food banks, pick up parcels, drop off with families where needed. But the other pressure is essential household items. So things like nappies, wipes, all of those things that families are struggling to get hold of, partly because they can't get out of the house, but also because of stockpiling. The stocks are really low, so families are really struggling to get hold of essential items. So we've got those two immediate pressures. Within that, like others, we're very much hand to mouth with our funding. I had a piece of funding that was due to start in April. I've just seen an email from my commissioner who now wants to put that work on hold because of everything that's going on. So like others, it's that challenge. So that's more of a medium-term challenge. The immediate challenge for us is making sure that we're not letting vulnerable families struggle food, essential items.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Sarah. Just picking up on something you said there about relationship with commissions and finances. Although we're going to do more on finances, I'm aware that one or two of you have had interesting conversations this week with councils. Neil alluded to it a bit as well before and on online. Maria, I know you were talking earlier this week about some of the cash flow questions which were hitting you already in terms of some of your relationships with commissioners. Maria, would it be possible for you just to talk through some of the things you were raising on the thread earlier this week, because that might be instructive for other people as well?
If you could just unmute your microphone first, Maria. And Craig, we then have a message from Judith and David Osborne as well.
Fantastic. We'll go to them afterwards. So thank you. Yeah, over to you, Maria, unmuted.
Thank you. Yes, we were just trying to make some just quite clear messages in terms of the assistance that we need. So I think the first one was around PPE, but I don't know if people have seen the messages that
what's PPE?
Protective equipment, so like gloves and masks and aprons, and in terms of looking at sort of hygiene practice. So particularly because we will be supporting people in our services who will have the virus. So it will be where they have lower symptoms. So it was just making sure that was all in place. Obviously we have some, but because we're not normally having to deal with infectious diseases, we didn't have some of that equipment. But everyone that runs a registered location should be getting supplies direct from Public Health England. So I don't know if anyone has, but that should be coming by next Tuesday. Right. I have heard people who have had those deliveries, so that's helpful. But I've been asking our health partners kind of repeatedly around whether they could run some barrier training webinars for all providers across Surrey. I'm the strategic kind of independent lead. So just kind of, that sort of resource, just in terms of, just being able to ensure all of our staff have access to that training would be very helpful. But we haven't heard yet. And indeed, kind of what the sort of the community health teams, specialist health teams, what their offer is and triaging processes as we kind of move towards more acute situation. And again, I don't know, it's just not very clear communication coming backwards. And obviously, people, I do know of, providers that are supporting people now that have the virus. So, it's just that kind of urgency of clarification. We have asked our commissioners about through this process. So for the next 3 months, that would be good that we just get our normal payments, and and to trust us that if we're flexing support around just meeting priority needs and looking at other ways of trying to be creative for those people who are not in our kind of highest category of risk, that they just allow us to get on with that without requiring loads of kind of over monitoring. And again, you kind of hear, our lead commissioners are all very supportive, but I think it's just having some of those things formalised, because it just means we can just kind of get on without worrying about sort of contract variations every time someone might have a slightly different arrangement. So we've certainly kind of rag rated all of our people and looked at what are some of the minimum staffing levels for people with quite complex needs, what that could look like. Our short break service kind of is available for where we need some of that flexibility, and kind of just using technology for ensuring everyone's got tech-based solutions where it's lowest support. Our voluntary volunteer bureaus kind of based at district level have actually really kind of risen to the challenge and have already kind of offered us clusters of volunteers to help with things like picking staff up, where we're going to obviously have increasing public transport challenges. So making sure staff can get into work, looking at some of those lower tasks like cooking, shopping, to help people. So I don't know if it's just different in different areas, but they've been brilliant, and have kind of made that happen for us. And we kind of
step in, Maria. Leslie's just messaged to say that if there's a day centre local to you that is closing, they will probably have supplies you could have.
PPE, yeah. And just on the note of, because some of the points there, Maria, about volunteering and how community-based mutual aid is actually working. I think Judith Brody on the call was asking it, because some of this stuff's quite spontaneous and it's fantastic for that, but at the same time, a lot of it is it's without any safeguarding around it and that sort of thing. Does anyone on the call who's used to dealing with volunteers? I'm thinking, I'm looking metaphorically at Home Start people here. Are there any, when you have offers of volunteer help in whatever you're doing, be it in your service or beyond, are there any sort of big messages around how to best do that when there isn't time or capacity to do all the right kind of safeguarding stuff, or do you simply avoid those offers or kindly decline them? What's the right approach to the very sort of often very well-meaning mutual aid offers that come forward at these kind of times? Does anyone have a sense on that? Because it isn't something I know much about, but I think others might. thinking possibly of our Home Start colleagues, or indeed anyone else who deals extensively with volunteers.
Craig, I could give a quick view, but I'm sure loads with Peter here. I bet loads of people would have views too. I think there's safeguarding is obviously a big word and encapsulates lots of different things. I think in the absence of the two quick points to make. One is that there are a bunch of volunteers who are ready to be mobilised, who are already DBS checked and relatively trained. So I would always try and lean on those volunteers first, because I think they're nearer to sort of understanding some of this stuff. But secondly, in the absence of that, and we're obviously in unique and different times, then it's really important that there is somebody to coordinate and think through the risk assessments of everything happening and manage it and mitigate it accordingly. And if you see, if there isn't at least somebody who has an eye on that, it will go missing. There's lots that people can do to volunteer. It doesn't need DBS, doesn't need loads of safeguarding training and everything else, but you do need somebody around who has some sense of what the framework needs to be and where the boundaries lie in these things. Otherwise, it will get into trouble.
Yeah, that's really helpful and sensible as well, Peter. Thank you. I know there's one or two people who are on the call who are working. Well, there's several of you who are also in the social care space generally. David Osborne, I think. David, did you have a point you wanted to raise as well, or a question, I should say?
Yeah. Hi, Craig. Hi, everyone. It was kind of very similar experience to what Neil alluded to earlier on, really. So a few points, I guess. From our point of view, we appear to be in a position with the council locally where they're prepared to talk about what a typical run rate financially is on the kind of last 2 months and continue with that on a payment basis, and we reconcile back at some point in the future. So that's been helpful, and they seem to be extending that to quite, most other providers as well. So that's useful, I think. The other stuff is we've been reaching out locally to kind of retail and places where we know staff are being laid off and trying to fast track into any kind of opportunities if we've got low-level support work or whatever that may be. So we've actually had quite a decent take-up of interest in that over the last couple of days. So that's also been useful as well. So yeah, I think they're the kind of key things for us so far. I mean, very similar to Neil, day services scale back to a community-based outreach offer, prioritising around our 24-hour services really, and that's our experience so far. But I suppose very similar to what we've heard from quite a few people is that the silence from the local authority has been pretty immense, unfortunately, and it's kind of only now I think they're suddenly waking up to the enormity of what might be coming down the track. We're at the point now where we're saying to the council locally, look, let us get on with making the contingencies, and we will come to you when we need, when the stuff that we think is falling through the gaps, because they're suddenly trying to throw all kinds of social work and other inputs at it, which is probably going to confuse things really. So I think they do seem to be taking an approach where they're saying, look, kind of you're the local experts in your people and the people you know. So get on with it and come back to us. And then finally, like many other people have said, we've established service level WhatsApp groups to get messages out to staff. We're doing Microsoft Teams meetings as of next week with all our managers and SMT weekly. We've extended our Zoom account out to our local third sector alliance so we can reach out as group CEOs locally as well. So similar kind of stuff, I think. Similar kind of stuff, Craig, I guess.
Yes, thanks, David. And we've got Karen Jackson on from the Carla, who Karen's a newish member. I'm pleased to have you with us, Karen, because obviously you're at the heart of the of local response from health, which because obviously the NHS is being given the lead responsibility really for driving the effort in localities, and you're working kind of in harness with them. Are there any sort of specific insights for social care colleagues that are leading social care that you're picking up from your insider track that you'll have being part of the operation locally where you are in West Yorkshire?
So first of all, hello everybody. I am new, but I know some of you. Hello, Raybag. So our experience locally is that, again, we have a deafening silence from our local authority. So we have purposely gone out of our way to involve all our social care colleagues in all of our planning conversations, almost despite the lack of noise from the top of the local authority. To be fair to our local authority, at the moment they are completely diverted by the loss of schools, and so they're in the place of how do we support the system in providing key worker childcare support. So and actually, to be fair to them, that's going to be critical for us, so I want to support them in that. So we've sort of gone round it by engaging directly. We have this afternoon something called a third sector leader session, where we've got all of our local third sector leaders and us and other partners in the system together on a call about, so how do we support each other and work through that together. And we've also done quite a lot of work in reaching out into our communities about people who currently don't have any income and don't have any roles. So we've taken a position that says we have a role in providing social impact by providing employment for people during this time, for things as simple as, you know, at the moment the guidance from the centre in the NHS is that as a community we have to be able to take discharges within 1 hour. And one of the issues about taking discharges within 1 hour is that you've got to move them. So Lance will know this story from Grimsby because he and I work together over there. I pinched his idea of, we're going to buy a bus and we're going to find people to man that and offer employment in 2 places where that employment has disappeared, and we're going to use that to move patients, and it's extended into now moving swabbing kits, moving IT equipment around the place so we can work remotely. It's sort of extended into something else. So yeah, guidance will come out today around the out of hospital requirement from the NHS. So I'll find a way to get that to you all and share that. So it'll come out on the NHS network, but I'll find a way to get it to you all.
That's really helpful. I'm going to bring Lance in a second. I think talking to people who are at the centre of local efforts is really interesting, because we get a bit of an insight as to what that means for the rest of us. I've got a couple of friends, professional friends, who are involved in the kind of what they term Gold Command, which is the coordination of the response within a particular locality, and that's proved to be quite a useful source of information, which I've been able to sort of share selectively with you individually at particular times, because because the situation is so fast moving, that it's been a very useful thing to hear from those, and I'm hoping at some point to be able to bring some of that to bear into the calls as the situation levels off a bit as well. I've got 1 or 2 people lined up for that.
And Craig, if there's anything I can do there in terms of being part of that system, and if there's anything people want me to go and look at or find out, or that we can share, shout. And
that's brilliant. And anything you think you're picking up that would be of general help and interest to people who are not sighted would be fantastic. Lance, thank you, Karen. Lance has been just asked me if he could come back in again. So over to you, Lance.
2 quick points, and the second one feeds into the discussion we've just been having. Just going back to Maria's earlier point, if you do take delivery of PPE from NHS England, you may well receive packages that have got an expiry date of April 2021, and it's a sticker. When you lift that sticker, it says expiry date April 2016. Don't worry about that. It's just the way the NHS stockpiles them. They are still safe to use. And there's been a big issue across the NHS about this PPE that's allegedly got 1 expiry date and then a new expiry date put over the top. They are still safe to use if you get them. So I just put that out there. I just want to go back to one of the weaknesses of you as members and of you as leaders of outstanding social enterprises is you are incredibly modest. And at the moment, this is not the time for modesty. This is the time for you. You are the most creative, intelligent, amazing people I've ever had the privilege to spend time with. And your system needs you. We need you not to be modest. We need you to go and get in front of your council, because they are not operationally focused. They don't know how to deal with this kind of crisis. They need your intelligence. They need your creative minds. As Karen alluded to, the way the system works is within a hospital or a big system that's called bronze. Across a whole city or council area, there is something called silver command. And the council are responsible for that. Nobody asks them whether they're capable or have experience of it. They just assume they know how to do it. And often they don't. And that's not their fault. And as Karen says, they're desperately trying to sort education out at the moment. If somebody as bright and intelligent as this group walks into a council and goes, what can I do to help? They will take your arm off. And you are the natural leaders in your communities. You are respected. You are understood. You are, people know this isn't about personal gain. They know your morals. They know the social value you bring to the table, and they should trust that. And if they don't, that's an indictment on them, not you. But you need to be putting yourselves forward to go, what can we do? Because we are used to being creative and we are used to thinking in different ways, and let us use that resource.
Craig, you're currently muted, but should we just check with Leslie? She has a blue hand up. You're still muted, Craig.
Let's go to Leslie. Yeah, let's go to Leslie.
I feel that I need to big up Liverpool Council, because we've had brilliant conversations with them. And actually, I'll be honest, I think a couple of years ago it would have been different, but there's been a change in the management, and that's resulted in a real difference. But we've been talking to them about payment, and some of our services, supported living, shared lives, will continue, but the day centres for people with learning disabilities won't continue, certainly not in the same way. They're really clear that as long as we can look at how we can deliver those services differently, or we are putting those people into our own critical services or pooling them wider, they're not looking to profit from this. And they've said that they will continue to pay us because they don't want to destabilise the market. And I think there's conversations, where councils aren't behaving like that. There's absolutely conversations to be had. And I met with the director of adult services a couple of days ago, and what we talked about was in terms of how we invoice, because obviously where it's based on hours, well, the hours are going to be falling through the floor. And we suggested that if we did an average of the last 12 months, and that would just enable us to to have that reliable source of income. The other thing that we've done is we have offered to the council, one of our directors, in fact Rachel, who's a member of the New Leaders group that Social Club runs, and so Rachel may well go and do some work with the authority. And then separately, although the council's aware of this, we're linking up with some of the major other major providers in the city, and so that we can look at where we can pool staff. And so we will effectively do that ourselves, and the council almost doesn't need to worry about that. And Rachel has been doing some work on it, and once we've kind of tidied that up, then be happy to share that with other people in terms of just a kind of a live how to keep live information on what each provider is using and what each provider needs, so that we're in a position to be able to pool staff and share.
Good. So a really positive experience of a particular council in a particular place, and your relationships there obviously have been really important. But a big message from yourself, from Lance, from others would be, if you're getting a deafening silence, step forward. Yeah. Step forward and be heard. Guys, we're coming up to the hour, and I know you all have urgent 12 o'clock things to do. So I just wanted to finish off with a couple of things. Tomorrow morning at 9:30, we've got the second of these webinars. This is going to be all about the all about the financial and commercial dimensions of this. Many organisations are facing immediate term and short term financial challenges, income model challenges over the next few weeks and months. We have as a speaker a gentleman called Ian Hasdell, who is an ex KPMG senior partner and is an independent business advisor to a number of social businesses, including mine, and is for those that haven't encountered Ian before, he's amazingly clear and amazingly helpful. He's been a social club speaker before, and he's fantastic. So Ian's going to be on at 9:30 tomorrow, providing the service and support that Lance did, to kick things off, and that's well worth coming to. As Joe said right at the beginning, we've got a number of these calls, a number of these webinars. We're adding them as we go along. There's one on digital next week, well, not on digital, so on remote working. We're going to have one on the people and HR dimensions in due course. We're also having just one about just how to kind of look after yourself as a leader in this time, as Lance alluded to before, about putting on the oxygen mask in order to help others. And I think Lance's example of having a break before the difficult period ahead is a really powerful example of that. So we've got a lot going on. As Lance said right at the start, the social club for the time being is a support club. That's what it is. That's why we're here. What that means is obviously that myself, Joe, and Mark are here as needed on the other end of a phone or an email. Other members of the club are available. We also have a bank of associates who are available to you, who volunteered and are happy to help you on a pro bono basis with any particular problem that's facing you. If you want somebody to talk to, or you want somebody to help you short term on an issue, we don't need that to be a commercial thing at the moment. This is a national emergency. We want to help you. So do come forward if we can be of any specific help at this time. We will always try and help you. Okay, I think we're just about coming up to time. We would love your feedback on this. We want to get these better and better as we go along, and we've not used this format before. We'd be delighted to get your feedback on how to make this work better. Any helpful tips and advice. Equally, if anyone would like to facilitate and lead one, I'd be delighted to step back and allow you to do that as well, if you feel the need.
If now that people have seen the lineup of webinars, they're all on the website and they will be added to, but if you have a particular question or number of questions you'd like to ask, please email them to us in advance relating to the relevant date of the webinar, and then we can have those ready and kick off a session with them.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. Just final thanks to Lance for agreeing at short notice to pick things up today from his holiday. Thanks to you all for coming on. I'll look forward to seeing you all and talking to you all in the coming days and weeks. And good luck, and take heart from the support of colleagues at this time. We're all here for each other. Take care. Goodbye.